So thanks everybody for coming to ArtStation's panel for the Brick Foundation. We are going to be talking today a little bit about leveraging the art community for empowerment. But before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and let everybody introduce themselves and go.
I'm Ashley, also known as A Cubed on Artstation and on Twitch, and I'm a 3D character artist and concept artist, concept sculptor, more or less, working in the animation industry.
My name is Phillip Boutte Jr. I am a concept artist working primarily in live action film in costume. So I am doing a lot of work with Marvel and a few other properties in working on primarily costume design.
I'm Jasmin Habezai-Fekri. I'm a 3D environment artist in Cologne, Germany right now, and I'm mostly into stylized environments. And yeah, that's why I do. I'm Codes Curly on Artstation and locally Codes on Twitter.
I'm Esther. Was once a concept artist for games, now viz dev in animation. And yeah, I am Art by Wu everywhere because Esther Wu is taken by a graphic designer.
All right. So let's start off some of the questions. First of all, thanks guys for being here and taking your time to sit with us and have a discussion about this. So just to kind of get started, what are some of the ways that you guys found to network in the art community, and how does that affected your career and your day-to-day? Ashley, you're up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so my networking, for the most part, has come through. Well, when it first started, it was from school and like the industry events and stuff like that is how I started to even talk to professionals, because before that I didn't know anyone. So there was like a whole bunch of like just, reaching out with emails and things like that, just getting to know people. If I had known about Twitch back then, though, it would have been way better for me, because I've met so many more people, gotten so many more opportunities just by streaming. Like I'm not even
That's
kidding.
awesome. That's great.
I don't think you guys would have even known me if it wasn't for Twitch either. So it is that sort of like a situation. So my networking thing is all about just being loud and obnoxious online.
Phil?
I think networking for me, I wish that I had gotten more into Twitch and a few other things, or at least using my Artstation more, like a few things just to kind of network. I've really met a lot of artists, especially over the last few years on Instagram, and been able to engage and interact with them and network and talk about like art around the world and in different fields. And then primarily a lot of my networking usually ends up being, until pandemic, in person. So I would go and meet with different costume designers. I would go where they are. I'd go to events. I try to kind of put myself out there in that way. I also would do a lot of cold emailing, meaning that like I'd watch something like Penny Dreadful and be like, I wonder who the costume designer is from this. It was really well done. And so I'd write them. I'd find out and do things like that. So that was kind of like been my broadening. But now, like Ashley said, with Twitch and all these other avenues of being able to talk to people, it's pretty endless. You could it's great I think it feels powerful to like find an artist or someone that you like in South Africa and just talk to them. It's really cool,
It's never been easier, right, to reach out and talk to somebody.
It's so easy.
Yeah. Jasmin?
So for me, my main tool for networking has been Twitter, because even before getting into university, I knew no one who works in games or 3D. And I just opened Twitter, made an account and started posting my art. And then through that, I just got to know so many people. I got so many freelance gigs through that and my other job opportunities. And being also in Europe and in Germany, I felt very at first disconnected maybe from the industry as a whole, because it's so US and UK centered, but through Twitter itself, I was able to like get to know people that I would never meet in person, being in Europe or being in Germany. So since then, Twitter has been the main place where I just share my art, and people also find my art most of the time. And being an introvert, I think that helped too, because on Twitter you just post your work and it's out there and people interact with it. And that really helped me also to get out of my shell and be more confident in sharing my work online and being open about it, I think.
Awesome. Esther?
Yeah, I think similar thing with everybody. Just I mostly did more online before moving into the West Coast, because I felt the same way. Even though I was in the US, I was from the East Coast, and like there's like no studios there. At least when I was beginning, I was trying to be a concept artist in games, and there's like two.
There's
Right?
2 on the East Coast. That's it.
Like that, or large AAA studios. At least like I couldn't stay home in New York. That's what I mean.
Right.
So there was a lot where online, at least that back then, it was forums. Nowadays I'm on Discord. Like I'm more lurker. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess I was more lurker on conceptart.org, if everyone remembers that, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody remembers the good old days. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so primarily for me, networking was mostly online until I actually like went to California, or anywhere in between. I guess for me too, I do more like physical networking because I moved around so much. And I don't know
What's
if that's
that? In the time of
Yeah.
COVID, I forgot what is that again? I don't remember
What?
physically meeting people.
yeah. So I don't know if that was like a luxury or not. It definitely did not feel like a luxury at the time because of so much moving.
I have to say it's really nice to see all of you guys' faces too, because like I'm used to just meeting everyone. It's feel like a year-long like round of Mortal Kombat. Like everyone looks like a ninja.
That's true.
So it's
That's
nice
true.
to see your happy faces today.
Yeah, it's very good. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. When you guys are searching for opportunities online, like what can you recommend, and what kind of tactics do you use to kind of go about that? Ashley?
Like opportunities as in like jobs or resources?
Yeah, like how do you when you some people are lucky enough to where they don't really have to do much searching. Some
Mhm.
people are smart and are searching even when they're on the job, and then there's people that are constantly searching for work, right? Like, so what would be some of your guys' advice on younger artists that are trying to get into the field, even veteran artists that are having a hard time trying to find work? And I think, Ashley, this is a great opportunity for you to talk a little bit about, a little bit more about your Twitch experience,
Mhm.
and where all that's come from, and so forth.
So I want to just preface and say that I am one of the lucky ones that I don't have to be looking for things. It's been nonstop for me, like contract after contract, and like even right now it's just like it's a lot. And that's what happens when you have some sort of a presence online, and once you've worked with one person and those people, like let's say you want to make a good impression on specifically the producer and the directors. Those are the two specific, maybe even the art director, because those are the people that are going to be hiring you for projects moving forward as well. So if you're really great to them and you're delivering things on time, even if you're looking at your work and being all like, oh, well, maybe this is not as great as I think it is, and I could spend even more time on it. As long as you're giving things on time, they're looking at that as like, good, we like her, And so there is this sort of balance that happens between the more business and productive side of like the working environment versus the actual art aspect, right? And so when it comes to actually getting more and more jobs, and this is more directed to like the veteran side, is just sort of reach out to those contacts of producers and directors that you've been working with before, and try and maintain those relationships, because that's what's going to keep snowballing. And then on Twitch as well, that's what really starts the new opportunities, is just kind of constantly putting your stuff out there and having as much fun with the work that you truly like to do. And you're going to get noticed for your own personal style and your own growth online as well. So for me, like I got, again, like prefacing this as like I'm one of the lucky ones, is the opportunity to stream with Pixelogic just fell in my lap. So like when I say like it's I'm not somebody who really struggled with that sort of a thing. So I'm sure other people will be able to talk a little bit more about like the actual like online working for like, more followers, I know that sort of just kind of snowballed for me because of the Pixelogic thing. But that definitely does help with growing an audience, is if you can find your niche and stick to it.
Yeah. Phil?
I think for me, I actually said it best too. I've been lucky, at least in my recent career now, to not have to necessarily look for work, but I did freelance for a very long time where I would jump from project to project to project. So one of the things that helped me mentally was starting to recognize, like, I was like, at some point, all of my friends that worked in a studio, I would be jealous of the fact that like they see the same people every day and like they're sitting in there and they're working. But then I knew freelance wise, because I'm jumping from project to project, like I'm not working at Disney where I work on one movie for 3 years. Like I'm working on this movie for 3 months, then I jump here for 2 months, and I jump here for 4 months. So what I learned is to find mental clarity and understanding that the inconsistency is the most consistent thing, meaning that I needed to be mentally aware that when I am off, I need to take that time to mentally decompress, because I'm going to go back to work. I don't know exactly when, but I will. And what started to happen is that I would usually be in this like 2-week pattern before I finished. I would find something else magically. So I was like never at a point where I was really out of work. I'd go from one movie, I'd be there for 3 months, and then somehow, some way, 2 months or sorry, 2 weeks, 2 to 1 week before I was finished, another project would come up and I would easily just transition to it. I think what starts to happen is that initially in the beginning of my career, I really did go like door to door, like a salesman, and I just sold myself. I sold my portfolio. I went and looked at costume designers. I tried to research what they do, what they're looking at, what they're looking for conceptually, and tried to learn as much as I could. But I also just tried to find a rhythm in understanding that there was going to be work and that I just needed to show people that I could do it. So another thing I did is vary my portfolio. I think you should put your portfolio towards the things that you want to do, like the things you're interested in. But I also varied my portfolio in style to show that I can do something that looks more animated and I can do something that looks photoreal. That kind of helped me be this malleable person that could kind of fit into the different jobs. And so that's kind of how I approached it. But it was, I will say that the work that I did then, I think has served me well now in being, firmly planted. Now I'm at Marvel with VizDev. So it's like work is coming into us. I'm still freelancing, but it just feels a little bit more secure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just a real quick question before we go to the next guest. Is there any advice that you would give? Because I feel like that, when I started working in the industry, I was very unprepared for the, hey, you might be 3 weeks, you might be 2 months on a project, but then, you're on the next thing, and then you're on the next thing. And then very quickly, like within like a year and a half time, like I had worked on over like 10 movies at that point. Right. But, what do you think, are the pluses and the minuses to that? To young artists, like what are the do's and don'ts? Like, do you constantly jump ship for something better? Is that a mentality that you shouldn't, focus on? Or is that something that, you have to look at it in different ways, right? Like you should always stay till you're not, not needed anymore, offer help as much as you can. But then, at some point you do have to jump to the next film that needs you. But would you recommend leaving in the middle of a production, or,
No, I'd say I wouldn't recommend it at all. I think definitely.
I knew the answer to that. I just wanted to have someone else say it other than me.
Definitely not. It's not the jump. When I say jump, I mean, I'm doing a full process. I'm finishing out a film, and in that last 2 weeks or so, there's not much left to physically design. And so I know that I'm pretty much wrapping up and I'm towards the end of the project to where my usefulness is no longer there.
Right.
But I think the best thing about doing it is you're trying to find projects to jump to without leaving people high and dry, because ultimately it's a long game. And what I mean by that is you're establishing relationships that you want to continuously use over and over again. So you don't want to cut them off and be like, oh, this movie's awesome, I'm going to jump over there, because then that person next time can have the awesome movie, but they remember you leaving them for something else. So it's like you kind of have to just understand that you're slowly building it. And then after a while, you end up in the best possible position, which is you have multiple clients to where you have things to jump to. So it's like you're
Right.
setting up these little platforms so that you constantly have a place to stand, as opposed to just being like, that platform's awesome. And then the next time, like when that platform dumps you off, you're like, where do I go? And you just fall into oblivion of like no work.
It happens. It can happen. Jasmin?
So for me, it's pretty much similar to what Ashley said. I was very lucky to have a lot of opportunities coming to me, so I didn't have to look much, but I think that was all based on the fact that I've been continuously very active on social media, and I built my platform over the past 3 years and kind of built also a niche in the style that I'm doing, and people know me for that style and want to give me work based on what I'm creating, which is a great position to have. And that was all based on being always very open to how I even do my work. I always post a lot of work in progress. I even share the ugly sides of what I do, if something's going wrong, and just how I approach things. And that really helped also with getting opportunities, because people were like, oh, it's nice to see that you're actually open about your creative process and that you can iterate a lot and do these things. And that actually leads to building also long-term relationships online, because people see that I'm consistent with my work, that I consistently work on my portfolio, and that I don't have like super long downtimes where I don't do anything and then suddenly show up again. It's like always try to be very present and make sure that people know I'm working on something right now, and that could lead to other opportunities as well that could help me to sustain myself in the long run as well.
Esther?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, if I was gonna reflect on kind of like my opportunities and how they kind of like either snowballed or didn't, I would say definitely I've never thought of myself like being lucky, although like having had consistent work and actually had the luxury where I went, because I worked in studio almost all the time except for like a little freelance stint, but that was like 6 months. I applied, like it wasn't like I got let go. I applied to a different studio, left, and it was like 2 years at one studio and then 1 year in a different studio. And I was definitely more on the active side. Like I don't know, like I've had some friends where they, didn't do any social media, didn't do any of that, and at the time I was like, how could you be like that? Like how could you just take it easy? Like, just that type of mentality.
I got bills to pay, man.
Yeah. Like, how do you pay your bills? But I didn't ask them that because, well, that's rude. Like, I don't want to like open something that's actually, like, because everyone has their own financial situations and reasons. And then now, like 5, 6, 7 years later, they're fine. Right. They took it their own pace and they're fine. And I think with that
and they're mentally stable, unlike most of us.
Yeah. And to take that into perspective about like, how do you, prepare for opportunities? How do you like do you keep trying to find them? I find that like no matter what, it's like know what works for you. And if you keep doing good work, like eventually, like it'll find you. Although that does sound a little like up to the wind, but it's like I never thought I'd work in animation, for example. Like I never thought my work was even geared towards animation of some sort. And then like it, I didn't think I still don't think I'm ever gonna like paint a Disney princess. Like
don't say that. Don't put that on the universe. What are you doing?
I find the rate significantly lower. Like I have worked way more on zombie stuff than, so I'm just like I can see that. Right,
it could be a zombie princess.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, actually beat me to it.
Right. And so like I think the other thing for me that I want to say on that matter too is never like shoot yourself in the foot about what not to create. Like
now you tell me.
Yeah.
We talk about like, oh yeah, like gotta make your portfolio to like go to a different studio or for a new job opportunity, but also like in the actual making of that portfolio, the content has to be something you do want to do. Like I know that's not, because like when you're first breaking in, and I remember it very like lucidly that like I had to make stuff that looked like certain things. Like that sounds superficial, but it was like, at least at the time, being much younger, you're way more impressionable, so when you hear somebody say like, oh yeah, in order to do X you have to do Y, or get X you have to do Y, you just kind of like follow it along with like a bunch of other young artists. But now in the long haul, I realize it's, like as you're becoming more of a veteran, you have to switch gears just a little bit because you're not really just like trying to break in, you're trying to stay in. And that in itself is like a different process.
Right. I mean, it's definitely it's an interesting take to see, how that changes over time, right?
I'm here.
Okay, Phil's here. All right. So yeah, a lot of that is in itself interesting to see how that has changed over time, and how much it quickly changes in your career, right? First thing I was always told, like, oh, if you want to go to Blizzard, then your portfolio better be full of stuff that Blizzard likes. And there's some truth to that, but also I can think of so many artists that have nothing similar with Blizzard style that they hire because they need to have the style changed up from time to time, or added to, or to think that a style guide is one and done and it never changes. Like you could just take, for example, How to Train Your Dragon. If you look at the first one compared to the third one, a lot has changed. I mean, it's similar, but the artist's eye can see a lot of different things, right? And even, Esther, when you were getting done with school, I feel like the education system for art blew up as well.
Yes.
Right. So now there's so many more options, and I correct me if I'm wrong, you just started in a school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Shameless
Awesome.
plug. But anyways, it's and I never thought that I would like teaching as much as I have. And getting to teach all over the world and Art Center, and it's pretty awesome and amazing. You get to see a lot of young talent come up and do all that kind of things. Let's see here. Other than that, it's just really interesting to see how it's evolving and how it's quickly evolving and how everybody's adapting in the pandemic right now. So the next question I have for you guys is, how do you support other artists in the community? Like, what do you do when you see an artist that either needs work or is an up and coming talented person? What are some of the things that you try to do when that comes around? Ashley?
Well, for me, like if I see, so in terms of like needing work or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to talk about like my current situation. Like I get a lot of contracts that I can't
Sure.
accept. So sometimes I write down, like if I see like, specific artists, I have like a little tiny list, for different styles and things like that, specifically animation related things. And so a lot of the time I have to decline a potential new client and I say, hey, why don't you check out these portfolios? And I just send out like, 2 or 3 that I found that I think would be kind of neat. So that's where the networking thing is really nice. Like, even
Yeah.
if you don't know how to be super personable like online with like your favorite artists, just being like, just saying like, hey, can you give my art critique or whatever, get their eyes on it, you might end up on one of their lists that gets sent out in the future. There's a possibility of that, right? And then when it comes to Twitch, I've got a lot of people asking me questions all the time. So I'm just kind of constantly trying to get everybody to realize that you have to put in as much work as you can, but also balance your life, right? Because I think a big
What's
problem.
that?
Oh, I know.
Balance life. What?
Well, especially when you're really young, right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't get as tired as easily. And so you end up like working like 20 hours sometimes on an art piece, like in like straight. I've done it and it's not good for you. Like you got to balance like, life and working. And the amount of time doesn't necessarily like the amount of time that you put into it in one sitting doesn't necessarily correlate to how good you're going to get. It's about how you study and studying smart and things like that I would say. And I try to tell people, okay, this is really what you got to focus on, is like, don't just think about it as a grind. Think about what you like to do, And then every single time that you do a study or do a piece, try and do something like look at it critically, say what can you see is wrong, and then try and do that thing better the next time. So if every single piece that you're doing, the next, you're trying to do something just a little bit better, you're going to get better. And it doesn't mean that you need to spend like 18 hours a sitting or whatever, because that's not good for you. And it's not going to help you. Like it's as much an analytic part of the learning process, right? Like you need to analyze the world around you as much as practice with your hands. So you need to give your brain the same amount of time in the world as your hand is on the paper or the stylus is on the intuos, right? So
right, yeah. I mean, it's interesting to see how the more we learn on our own and the more things that we pick up in a professional environment, I really don't believe that like doing 100 thumbnails in a day is healthy, because you don't learn anything from it, right? Like when and this is I guess a methodology that I've seen in some of the higher end schools where they're like, no, you know, each class has to have like 10 to 15 hours worth of homework. And it's just like, well, if you're paying all that money, like all that information doesn't get absorbed. You just become, you know, automated, where you're doing it without thinking, and that can make it even harder to break through different barriers when you're actually out in the field, because you're like, well, this is the only thing I know how to do, right? Like, so I just don't think that that's a healthy way to do things anymore. I think that doing personal pieces and learning and seeing and doing experiments, like not everything has to be published, right? Is something that I think a lot of artists have trouble with, you know. Jasmin?
Yeah, I think that I definitely agree with that, because especially nowadays with social media, people think they have to produce art quickly and like be very fast.
Yeah.
And exactly. Yeah. And you go on like on Twitter and Instagram and somebody posted new art and you're like, oh damn, I'm not finished with my art piece yet. And I think younger people especially should like not get blindsided by that. It is worth putting in the time into an art piece and polishing it and bringing it to like a final stage where you're happy with it, because then when you want to find work, I think that piece is much more worth than having like 10 kind of mediocre pieces in your portfolio that people would be like, okay, why did you put this in your portfolio? It's kind of half finished and rushed. And especially when you want to find work, it's important to have like a good standard in your portfolio already, that people see it and be like, okay, you know that these are your good pieces and I'm keeping these good pieces in my portfolio. I'm not showing like all the 20 things that I did in the past 3 years. And
Right.
That's like the main advice I always give people. Like it's helpful to post that you are looking for work, and whenever I always have gigs that I can't take, I always recommend people that I know and worked with that could like take on this and recommend them to others. But at the bottom line, if you see that there's no work coming in and you're applying and it doesn't work out, you need to sit down and look at your work and be like, okay, maybe there is something that I need to adjust and kind of work on. And then there are so many communities where you can get feedback and mentorship and kind of review your portfolio with them as well. And then like try again and then look for jobs. And that, I think it's a lot easier when you have like a overall more polished look to everything and like get fresh eyes also on your work to get an honest opinion, that if you are ready right now to like find work or look for work, that you don't also get discouraged, because if you try over and over again and then nothing works out with the jobs you're applying to or the gigs that you're trying to get, it's better to like try and ask for help and then see maybe what you can do to work with that. And then the community also obviously plays into that, that you help each other and share each other's work and say, okay, this person's looking for work, everyone like work with them together. And that does help a lot. But it's also like, I think, to have like a good eye on your work where it's at right now and what you need to do about it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that I've seen a lot of younger artists kind of struggle with, where they're just like, well, I'm not getting the work. Well, have you done any new artwork in a while? No, I haven't. Maybe you should do some, or, you know, and also if you do that and you're still not getting work, the cold hard truth is that it's just not good enough yet. Right. Yeah. But that's not a negative. It's only a negative if you treat it as a negative. Yeah. Right. Like, this is one of the only industries that I know where you fail upwards. You know, like it's like, oh, this didn't work. Hey, that one worked. Oh, look at that. I got a couple job offers. Oh, okay. Well, you know, and concept art is literally, you know, is this what you're looking for? No. Okay. Is this what you're looking for? No. Is this one? Oh, this one is? Okay, cool. That's, you know, like
Yeah.
technically those paintings that you did before you get to the final design are failed designs because they're not approved, right? But you know, it's taking the I guess the hard F out of fail to get past that.
Exactly.
I don't know. Yeah. Esther?
Yeah, sorry. I think like tying into, you know, overworking and how to be supportive in the community, like if you're the type of person that just grinds all the time, you're not going to make time for people in the community or support others.
Right.
So, you know,
Right.
heads down, good for you, but that's where balance is key, because regardless of what your actions do, if you're all heads down, right, there is some consequences to that, which people are
True.
going to, like, in the members of your community, just know you for that. And then if you're only heads up, and it's like, it's almost like the opposite, same connotations of like, oh, you just go to like all the networking parties, don't you? And like your portfolio is outdated, and you know it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I don't want to say that both are, you know, negative, have negative connotations or negative views, but certainly like relations and, you know, human interactions, right? You might not want to be one or the other in this case.
Yeah.
And I think also with supporting artists in the community, a lot of us talk about like, oh, giving off jobs to friends, and that's also that, you know, that's something that I do, where it's, you know, offering whatever I can't take, and I have friends that do the same to me. Oh, sorry. Same for me, but I think at different levels, support is a little more nuanced and comes in different ways. So, you know, if you're not like the one getting all these contracts and jobs, right, there's more ways to be supportive and helpful. Like, even if it's just like giving likes or retweets, like I really
That
appreciate,
helps.
yeah,
It
I
helps.
really appreciate
It really
my
does.
friends
Yeah.
like hearting, liking, leaving like a one word comment. Like, I think it's just due to the digital age now, and especially us being more into like the interwebs. A lot of it does come from like that approval, or, you know, having friends show like not so much like a very outright like expression, but just like a simple like, you know, I find that pretty supportive. Like, I don't know if I want to be with friends who like didn't like like didn't even like my work on Instagram. Like,
right?
it sounds,
Yeah.
it sounds superficial, but that's what it is too. It's like you can't even bother to like, or like you can't even bother to send like a message to be like, yo, that work was really great.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just like feedback or critique, it's just encouragement along the way, because like, as you said, Justin, failing upwards, where like any one piece of artwork could get you the job. Like, if it's 6 years old, or the literal like slap together shit you did like last week, and sure, like at the time that 6-year-old piece is like a failure, but like it will somehow magically not be a failure like
very true.
6
Very
years
true.
later, and you don't know that, because again, this industry really is failing upwards. Like, I would say I have some experience with that, where like I sent like my portfolio, I failed an art test, but I didn't change my portfolio, and like later on I ended up getting reconsidered for the job, and I did like nothing, like in the grand scheme of things, between like the failing the art test and the job. Like, I literally did nothing. And then for another job, it was like I did these like fun sketches, and it just so happened that like the series of them was the mood that they were looking for that project. And like, I think those sketches were okay. I don't think they were fantastic or anything, right? And the same goes for my old portfolio. But that just means that like you also don't have control over that. And so like supporting other artists is just being encouraging in general. Like, sure, like there are some pieces that are absolute crap. You will have crappy like, especially breaking in and really still figuring it out, like figuring what you want to put out. and like even just like the technicalities of art making, like there are definitely going to be some crappy pieces, but
it's all
overall,
subjective anyway.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
like,
way more
yeah,
subjective.
I mean, yeah, it's really interesting to see how much your opinion changes on that.
Yeah.
And, you know, and also figuring out early on that the industry is super small is, you know, and word gets around and those kinds of things. It does. It happens a lot, you know, quicker and faster these days anyways. But, you know, it's one of those things too, where the social interaction, even on social media, you can notice things, right? And you can see when when your friends are sharing your stuff and when they're not, when they're hyping you up and when they're not. And it's one of those things where sometimes you just you have to take a look at your circle and know that it's okay to not include people sometimes if they're not helping you grow as an artist, or if they're not there to support you mentally or you know, negatively. It's interesting to see that kind of an impact and what that is actually doing to your other artist friends, right? Like, so it's interesting. It's a very interesting thing. Phil, are you still there?
I was just going to say, I think that when you are working and you're kind of building community, one of the things that I like to do, I am on the board of the Costume Designers Guild as the illustrator rep. So I've kind of curated, I feel like an environment for the artists to feel respected and to feel as though they are all supportive of each other. I think support is a really big mantra for me, I think, as an artist, and just making sure that we're all supporting each other, and understanding that we are it's like the larger picture is that even though you're an individual artist and you're trying to go and do your work and make a name for yourself and all of those things, we still are colleagues, creative colleagues, in an environment where we are, you have your colleagues that there's camaraderie there. So I think that one thing that I try to do is make sure that all of the artists are helping to promote each other. We also share work, we share jobs, we recommend each other for jobs. Another thing that we've done insularly is we've all shared our rates with each other so that everyone knows what the going rates are, what people are making, what the skill sets are attached to those rates. I think all of those things have helped build our community. And then for me personally, when you talk about supporting artists just in general, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I do, especially on my Instagram, is I share art all the time. So if you follow my Instagram and you follow my stories, I'm constantly sharing the art of others to promote them, to build them up, to say, hey, look, isn't this cool? Look at this shape language. Look at how they designed this. Look at how they painted this. I think that it just helps to have that kind of camaraderie and that spirit. It's like you could dive into the other side of it, right? Which is like, we're all competing against each other. Oh no, like it could be that, but I just think that's a waste of energy. And I think that the energy that I like to put forward is the supportive energy, which is just like, I think what you've done here is great. I don't think I'm right for this job, but you are. Like, I think that all of those types of things help build up the art community in a way that's kind of, I think it's just the proper way. You know, this is the way, you know, Mandalorian way. This is the way that we should be. This is the way that we should kind of support each other. And I think that you do also see in that the positivity of return. You get positive energy back. Not to say that you should do it for that, but you do get positive energy by putting out positive energy. So that's kind of how I like to focus, you know, my artistic energy, is kind of trying to push myself. And also, one thing that I did want to say in terms of even just when you're trying to push yourself is thinking about, there's two things that I like to tell, you know, especially people that are trying to get in the industry, is one, you should be a self-starter, meaning that you should be the person that, like, if no one's giving you work to do, you should be making your own. I think that's a really important skill to have. And the other one is understanding, I think that artists themselves, we're incredibly, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves.
And it's hard sometimes to separate out the pressure you're putting on yourself versus the pressure that work is putting on you. And you have to be able to decipher those two so that you can also self-assess, meaning you should be able to self-assess your work and say, like Justin said earlier, maybe your work isn't good enough. You should be able to look at your work and say, I need to get better at anatomy, or I need to get better at how I render fabric.
And ask your peers.
Or I need to get better
if
at
you
shape
don't,
language.
yeah,
You should be able to assess those things. And not by being jealous of other artists, just saying, man, yes, ask your peers, like, man, yeah. I think you need to ask your peers. I think you need to have that kind of thought process and, ask, like, what do you think in like a bubble of self, but also recognizing that there are going to be people there to help you, that you're not alone. I think that that's kind of an important thing to have. So I just wanted to say that, but I think when I think about the art community at large, I think support is such a big part of that.
It absolutely is, and I'll see it, and you'll see the people that have given into the negative side. You can see it in their, they'll make an unsolicited, critique from someone that they've had no interaction with whatsoever. And it's rude. And it's, you can feel the vibe, the negative vibe coming from it. And it's just like, okay, well, obviously this person doesn't have a support system in terms of art, like there's no one that he can talk to. And being a teacher for the last 5 years, I can tell you the one thing that I've absolutely learned, that a negative critique helps no one, right? You have to, there are so many ways and so many, it's like a social contract that you make as an artist. Like if you're going to critique, at the very least, follow the very simple formula of the compliment sandwich, this is really awesome. I really like this. I think you should use some work on this, but also over here, that's really rad and cool. And I like this, right? Like it's really hard to be negative, when that happens, or to have that happen. But I could see it in a lot of, forum posts, on websites or Facebook groups, and it just happens. And for those of you that are listening, to those of you that make comments like that, it doesn't help you. And I know that there are some teachers out there that will disagree with me, like, oh no, you got to be harsh and you got to do it. No, you don't. You absolutely don't. That's a personal choice that you've made. Like that, it makes no sense to me. And like I almost fight over about this, it just doesn't happen. And then the other thing is that negative feeds negative, just like Phil said earlier, positive feeds positive. And it'll eat at you. You'll be scrolling through your social media and you'll be like, oh man, this person got this job, but oh man, I feel like I could have got that job. Or, like we all do it on a subconscious level. The good part is to catch it, is to consciously go, nah, that's not how you should think about that. Right. And it's hard because there's negative sides to everything. And I'm sure all of us have had our highs and our lows, and we think about these things. But, it's just one of those things that that other younger artists realize, is that every artist is going to go through the same struggle, whether you see it or not, because the echo chamber of social media is always positive and very rarely negative, unless you're on Twitter. I feel like Twitter is a good, it's like you get one really great post and then it's just negative. But I don't know. That's just from what I've seen. Maybe I need to switch up my socials and figure that out, actually.
Gotta get good at the mute buttons.
Yeah. I gotta figure out the mute buttons. Block those people, right?
Enhances the
and the block delete.
Yeah.
Block delete is awesome.
Yeah. Block delete is useful. It's very, very useful. Let me see here. So what are some of your guys' favorite places to go to get feedback for your work? That's a good segue into, this next question. So where do you guys go? Do you have you formed your own communities? Do you have your own Discord channel? I really think that that's the way to go. I've made one, but I've never opened it to the public. I don't know why. There's that crippling fear of nobody's gonna come in my room.
No, but like when it's small and quaint, that's great. When
yes, that's the best.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
That's a mess.
Yeah, I use Discord for specifically like critique stuff. For my own personal work, I've got like my circle of friends, right? And like other industry professionals that like if I need somebody to look at it or give me an eye on something, I'll just be like, "Hey, what do you think?" And I'll get that. But occasionally, like I'll also post something on my Discord, or you'll see me streaming, and people obviously in chat, if I say, "Hey, what do you guys think about this?" then you get like this big like slew of like 30 art directors suddenly appear out of nowhere. So that's pretty cool. But then it also comes like, you know, when you're asking for opinion online, there's a little bit of like a, okay, well, what do you take as actual feedback, and what, you know, like, how do you sift through that essentially? And that's where, that's where it gets a little bit tricky, and I don't personally want to delve into that because I have my own opinions about it, and everybody will have their own opinions about how that works. But I would say don't take everybody's word for granted, right? Because everybody comes from different backgrounds and different ideas of what they think your work should be.
Right.
Ultimately, it's your work. So if you think something will make it better from what you're seeing and it makes sense logically, then maybe implement it. But I don't want to go any further than that because I have my own opinions about it. But yeah, in terms of like the Discord, I use that all the time for just as a community for other people to share their work and talk to each other, and kind of bounce off of each other in sort of like this peer-to-peer way. You know, just a lot of the people there are not necessarily like, you know, super pro in industry professionals, but there are veterans in there as well that will come and pop by occasionally, drop some nuggets, you know, like here little sprinkle breadcrumbs, you know. So that's cool. And then whenever I have time, you know, and I see something that I can answer, I'll do it, right? So joining a bunch of different Discords, and maybe not like spamming your work, but like politely asking in some of your favorites from some of your favorite artists, like, "Hey, can you give me critique on specify?" Right? So if you say like, "Hey, look at my work," they're just gonna be like, "What do you want?" So that's another really important thing, is when you're asking for critique, is specify what are you looking for? Because when people fill my inbox with like, "Hey, can you look at my profile?" I'm like, "What do you want?" Like, I don't want to just start ragging into you, but like, you got to tell me, you know, like, so that's one thing as well that I try to like, you know, preface in my community is, if you want critique on something, say, "Hey, I've been working on this for X amount. I'm struggling with facial anatomy. What can I improve on facial anatomy?" Then you'll get very specific critique on that thing, and you can improve in that way. It's way better than getting this generalized giant list of somebody just ragging on you with a bunch of opinions on what your art should be, rather than the actual technical aspects of it. Yes.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, the some of the good nuggets that I learned when I was at Noman, for the, like, I think it was there for about a year and a half, was the rule of 3, right? If somebody goes, "Hey, that foot looks messed up." Cool. Okay, thanks. Don't change it. Right?
Yeah.
Somebody else says the foot's messed up. Nope, don't do it. And then, oh wait, one more. Oh, well, that's 3. Something's wrong with the foot. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of like the best way to kind of just do it. I mean, like, I know it seems simple and silly, but it's I just literally have a little Post-it note saying the rule of 3, and then there's a little star that says, unless it's the art director, always do what the art director says.
Yeah.
whether you agree or not, they're paying you, so you do exactly that. But yeah. Jasmine?
So for me, it's also Discord communities. I personally also prefer the smaller ones because, again, being introverted, it's sometimes very hard to just put your work out there, and like being active in a Discord as well is so overwhelming sometimes because there's so many people. But it really helped me because you get to know a lot of people who also work in the industry. Like there's one that I'm pretty active in, it's called Experience Points. They even offer little mentorships just for like an hour where I can talk to people, or you just join the voice chat and people are sharing their screen and just talking about their work a bit. And I think that's really great because it breaks that barrier that you shouldn't be like too scared to ask for feedback, because I think a lot of younger artists especially have this, and being like in a disco where there's also like industry veterans, you feel maybe even more scared to put yourself out there into like this danger zone of like all these professionals looking at your work. But at the end of the day, I think people will realize that you just want help, and being open about needing help is, I think, the best step to take in that regard. And that's what I do as well. Like, I just try to talk in these places, share my work a bit, and engage with people so they don't feel like I'm just coming in there just to share my work and like promote myself and things like that. You can actually form bonds in these places too, and people really appreciate that. And it doesn't matter that only veterans are in there. There's like also a lot of students that give great feedback and things that you would maybe not think about really. So I think it's really important to be in different communities and see which one fits your needs the best, because everyone's super unique in that. And one thing might work great for me, but for somebody else, it's like not something that they would want to do. But I think trying out different things is the best way to go about it. And Discord is great for that, because I think on Twitter, it's a bit weird because people don't maybe feel as comfortable posting feedback there, because it's public, everyone can see it. It's like millions of people might scroll through it, and it just feels uncomfortable, especially when most of the time people don't ask for feedback on Twitter. It's pretty rare.
And then you get the part-time artist, casually chiming in with some knowledge that is good, some knowledge that is absolutely wrong for your field. But they want to feel validated. And one of the other things that I've noticed that is starting to happen a lot as well is people getting upset with artists, like professional artists, by not getting back to them very quickly. And it's just like, you got a full-time job, and some of us have families and other things that we have to do. So just understanding that they're people too, and that they'll get back to you if they can, but if not, just understand that it's not personal. They just are, busy. And if they do take the time to give you a lot of advice and you go, okay, and then you go ask another artist for the same advice, it's like, yes, you can go out and get multiple advice, but if I always make sure that I check back. Did you make the changes that you asked me? You asked that I told you for, or because if you don't do anything, you just want eyes. You just want a like. You don't really want my feedback, right? So, and there's been countless artists that I've dealt with over the years that have been like, oh yeah, what do you think I should do? And there's this, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, you need to focus on your ability to understand story and how to set a scene and watch a lot of movies. Like if you're trying to be a concept artist for the film industry and you're not into movies, what are you doing? Like, why are you here? Like, are you in love with the idea of working in the industry, or are you actually in love with working in the industry? Like understanding where those passions lie. There's a lot of people that love the idea of working in the video game industry, but can't seem to, build a portfolio or know where to start or anything like that. Or they won't, I mean, it's just... I
was gonna say, there's that thought process too of just like, at a certain point you should be able to look back at it. This is fun. Like, it's honestly fun. You should be having fun. Like, if you're not having fun,
when does that happen?
Off. No, like, I mean, but no, I mean, it's like, I think you always have to like put it in perspective, but it's like, I think it's one of those things where if you start feeling like you're not having fun, then you have to like at least internalize and be like, what's going on? Or like, am I enjoying this? Or like, is this something I want to do? And oftentimes, because art is so broad, there are different avenues of this job, even within the job that we're doing, where you're like, I don't necessarily like character, but I love creatures, or whatever it is. Like, you have to try and figure it out. And once you hone in, it gets a little easier to kind of keep moving forward, I think. But it is difficult, and I think you do have to do that work. And then I always call it chasing the brass ring, or the golden ring is, I've been in the industry since I was little. So it's one of those things where I've seen people kind of come and go, and I've also seen people burn out. And then I've also seen people that are what I call, it's like they're chasing this golden ring without knowing what it is. So it's like, I want to be famous. That's not a goal. I want to be the main guy or the main person. It's not a goal. Like, there's an actual job in there. there. And if you know the job, then your main goal should be just doing the best that you can at that job. And everything else comes off of that. So when you see people on Instagram and you see, oh, they've got thousands of followers, you don't see the hard work. You don't see when they were like crying under their desk. Like you don't see any of that. You just see the
You saw that?
Yeah. You don't see any of that stuff. You only see the end result. And so it's really important to keep yourself focused on like the job. Like, you know, this artist is amazing. Their work is amazing. There's a lot of hard work behind that. There's a lot of like, there's years and years of studying their craft. And then ultimately there's love behind it, meaning that they love it so much that it's the thing that they do. I think that's just a really important fact, because I do think that people get these empty goals. And that's where you'll always fall. If your empty goal is like, you kind of want to do this thing and you don't know why, like so many actors are like, I just want to be famous. And it's like, that's not a goal. It's really not a goal. Like your goal should be to be really good at your craft. And then maybe you'll be famous. Who knows? Like, I mean, it's not the goal. And so that those types of goals make you burn out quickly, because you just don't, they're empty. There's nothing underneath them.
Yeah. Esther?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also say, like, I come from, again, like, I guess I've been saying that for a bit, but for me, I don't like posting online. So, like, even though everyone's giving, like, fantastic feedback on that or advice on that, you know, how to post online, for a person and people who don't, like, ever want to do that, like, my Instagram is not open for critique. Nope. Like, none of those pieces are, I mean, and if somebody does post critique or feedback like that, I'll take note of that, and whatnot. But personally, I like getting feedback from close and personal friends and art friends. And I know that that might also be a luxury, but I specifically try to find, like, I want to cultivate that feedback loop for myself. And
there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
And I think, like, it also connects you with people who also, like, value that, like, because everyone wants, like, you know, critique on their work, like, really, like, deep down, even though, like, nobody really wants to hear it, that's not the same as not really wanting it, because, like, right, you want to improve and you know there's something off, and sometimes you really do need a second pair of eyes, and
you do,
you know, and you don't need to be like, and when you have, like, a close friend or art friends that you trust, you know, that layer of animosity isn't, like, there, right? You're not just like, you're some fucking stranger, like, whatever, man, you know. But when it's like your partner or your, you know, your close friends in 5 years, you just can't be like, fuck you, you know, like, all of a sudden that's kind of initial, like, initial reactions kind of take away from that. So I feel like when it comes to feedback, I definitely go towards friends, and you know, and especially the con side of it is obviously you need to find these friends and, you know, input the years of time and, you know, effort. But the pro of it is that, like, they understand where you're going and where you want to go. And so when you say, hey, could you take a look at this, right? Where if you're asking a stranger, you definitely have to say, like, you know, the intro of, like, I want to work in what and so on and so forth. You know, how do I prepare my portfolio, or how do I get this to that direction? But when it's a friend, it's like they already all know that. So it's just like, hey, you know, like,
take a look at
take a look. I need some help. And you know, like, what I'm trying to work towards. And the initial setup is rather difficult, but I think it pays off way more in the long run, because likely this person is also going to be in the industry for a while. And, you know, not only do you have a friend, but you also have, like, an art connection, and so on and so forth.
Asking critiques on the internet can kind of be like asking a plumber for electrician help. You know what I mean? Where you're, you know, like, it's like you just don't do that, right? Like, you know, like my favorite is, you know, you might have someone that's really, really good at, say, like, I don't know, like, just like modeling, and then they'll start critiquing a concept work, and it's just like, your opinion is valid because you're an artist and you're a professional, but at the same time, it's kind of not, right? Like, you know, like, everybody has their pluses and their side, and you know, it's like I've said it before, it's subjective to everyone, right? And that's just where you have to use that professional hat and go, oh, thanks, yeah, cool, awesome, I'll get to that. But when like if you're, you know, if you're wanting to do, you know, character art and costume design and stuff like that. It's just like, well, Phil's opinion is a little bit higher than other people's, or Andy Park's opinion is a little bit higher than others, or Ryan, or, you know, like, you know, you can go down the whole list, you know, but it's like, and there's specialists in each of those fields, you know. It's just like, if I'm doing a mech, you know, like I'm gonna ask Esther, or I'm gonna ask Alex Constad, or, you know, like it's you know, it varies, and that's where the community that you build around you, I think, is very, very important, because you'll know what you want to get better on and who to ask, right? You'll know eventually.
I call it my friends know, I call it the mom response, which is your
The
mom
mom
loves the mom response, which is your mom loves everything. So your mom is just like, that's nice, dear, or that's so awesome. And that's literally what I don't want to hear. So when I call my friends and I'm like, hey, can you look at this? And they're just like, man, that's so cool. I'm like, thanks, mom. Now give me an actual critique. Like, I'm like, I want you to actually tell me
That's great.
what is wrong with this.
That's
like,
great.
I'm not asking for praise, you know, like, so it's like, that's kind of the thing. And I like taking that in, but it's
Can we
always
make
to
that
me,
a thing? Can we make? Can Twitter?
please.
Let's just send that to
It's
Twitter.
the mom response. It's like, I want an
response.
actual critique, not for you to just be like, oh, that's awesome. They're like, thanks, mom, that's so great. Now can I have someone kick my ass and tell me that the perspective's wrong or something?
Or you're like,
so I can,
thanks.
Yeah. For sure.
But you know what? It's funny. I think it's mostly the younger generation that's all they want.
That's true.
You know, they don't want to be told like, hey, have you noticed all your figures in your keyframes are always in the midground? There's nothing in the foreground, and there's never anything in the background. It's always in the middle, in the middle, in the middle, in the middle. You got 30 pieces here. How about you mix that up? And they'll be like, yeah, I will. Then 5 more paintings of the same thing happen because they're not comfortable with doing anything else, right? Like I've seen that time and time again. Yeah.
I think it's important when you ask for feedback, you should want it. Like, you shouldn't just
you
ask for
should
feedback.
want it.
Yes.
Exactly. And not just like start
That's a good
defending
point.
like your work and be like, oh no, I don't want to actually accept any feedback. Like, that happened a lot too, when you want to give feedback to somebody, but they're getting very defensive and like don't want to actually. It's like, okay, then don't ask. It's fine if you don't
That's
want
the worst.
feedback. That's then don't go out and ask for it if you don't want it
Yeah,
in the first place.
Yeah. So many artists, young artists that I know, they've done that online, where they're just like, you know, they don't want to actually take your advice.
No.
Right? Whenever you're asking, like if you're ever asking for a critique from someone, the response from the, you know, like you have your professional, they're giving you you know, their critique or their advice, right? The last thing they want to hear from you is an excuse why you did the thing. It doesn't matter. I don't need to know why you did that.
Yep.
Right? And because by you saying it is justifying why you're not going to change the painting, even after asking advice. So you should really stop doing that. But anyways,
I had someone reach out to me in my messages and said, you know, what do you can you please look at, what do you think about this? And so I gave a response back, and then got super upset and was just like, well, I did this because of this and this, and then I literally just wrote back. I was like, you reached out to me, like I was just living my life.
You're just like,
you asked me. I didn't just pop in here and give my opinion. You asked me, but it was just like, kind of like, I think what he wanted was the mom response. He wanted me to say, that's awesome, dear. It was like, I'm really trying to help. I really think that you just move these things around, but I do understand that. I think it's really good to be open, but it's also good, I think, on the flip side of that, it is also good to know when to critique, when someone's asking you for a critique, and then when someone's just asking you like what you think in general. So I think that that's something to do as well, just because it's personal. Art's personal. People are going to get, you know, passionate about it.
What are some of the ways you think the art community could do better with leveraging the art community, you know, like making sure that the right people can get their stuff seen and empowering others, you know? I mean, other than, you know, I think we've already covered that really, by keeping our eyes open for young new talent, sharing artwork and doing stuff like that. I mean, that's what comes to mind to me. What does that come to mind for you guys?
if the art community can just keep using specialized hashtags like that bring to light, communities of artists that, are more niche or less seen or underrepresented and things like that, so that they can be pushed to the forefront, and given a spotlight, essentially, then that's all the better.
That's good. Jasmin?
I really agree with that. Having these kind of hashtags helped me personally as well, especially at the start of my whole art journey, to be seen by anyone, because I didn't know anyone in the industry and was just like, okay, I'm out here, I don't know what to do, but I'm just going to share my work. And that really, exactly.
Just raising your hand subtly.
And that really helped. And I think another side is also being open to sharing resources and also education for people to access freely. Because again, being in Germany, we didn't have many game-related courses. There's just like a couple sprinkled around in the whole country, and that's it. So I had to go online and look for resources, for free resources, especially because I couldn't afford to go on expensive online classes. And having people in the art community doing free tutorials and courses or mentorships or anything like that has helped me so much. And I barely spent any money during my studies to learn all these things that I learned, because there were people out there who were so kind to share this knowledge with everyone and being not gatekeeping the knowledge they have. And I think that's a huge aspect.
It's
to also
still an
make
issue, I think, a little bit. Yeah,
it really
for
is,
sure.
yeah. Because I do understand that people want to make money, obviously, because they need to, and it's the craft they honed for so many years. But I think you can still give a bit of that, at least, to give some insight to people who can't really maybe access that because of a financial situation, or because they're not in the US and go to really great classes or events. And having even online events in the past year because of COVID was for me such a great experience, almost, because I got to see so many events that I would never be able to go to in person, because I wouldn't. And having that right now, and having this barrier broken, that everything is online and also very accessible, is great. And I think that will make it easier for many people to enter the industry, from also minority groups, from countries that are not very in the industry right now. And it will help so much to encourage people to get into the industry, because they can just learn things by themselves without having a ton of money or connections in the first place. And that really helps.
Esther, what's your opinion?
Out of everything, I would say the one thing that sticks to my mind about how to improve the art community, if somebody calls you out on behavior, reflect on it. Don't defend. I understand that there's a whole myriad of, when it comes to community, sharing art, sharing resources. Yes, all that is very important. But the other side of all the non-art related, don't forget that this is still a community, right? And people will remember how you act or how you respond in certain ways. And sure, people can change over time. I know cancel culture isn't everyone's fear. No one really wants to be canceled. And especially if the longer you've been, obviously you might have perpetuated certain things from previous, eras. I've definitely, I would be transparent about it and say that when the whole we need to hire more women in the industry, and the hit back was there should be talent, even I was yeah, there should be talent.
That's the wrong answer,
right? But
that's
now I'm
absolute wrong answer.
Now I'm oh, I see the problem that I was perpetuating by agreeing with that answer. That answer has nothing to do with more women or more, Black, or more representation in general, right? That was just the weird, those should not have been correlated.
It's a deflection answer.
It's a deflection troll answer.
And
don't
even
be silly.
the mentality behind it is sexist. The fact that you're dumbing down a person by how they look, and it's we're not even gonna talk about gender, because you can't cover that in an hour or so. There's a lot of history and anthropology and psychology. It borders a lot of things. And so going back to the hey, if somebody calls you out for an activity, whether or not you are being bad, ask yourself why. Really reflect, because likely you'll have an echo chamber of friends. I've had that where it's just I would I do something and I'm hey, is this off or not? And of course my group of friends, they don't see the problem, But, I show it to somebody else who's a little more outside. They're like, "Ugh," the way
Yeah.
you're wording that is
Yeah.
a little dicey. I'm like, oh, okay. You know
Yeah.
what? Like, I would rather like not have to like put
And
out something.
sometimes it's just you just said it wrong,
Yeah. Sometimes it is an
you know,
honest mistake.
and give and if someone's like, hey, yeah, this isn't cool, and you're like, oh, I see what you mean. It's not what I meant. Let me try and find the words to rephrase this, right? But very rarely are we, very rarely does the internet allow for that. I'll be honest with you. Like,
Yeah.
there, you have a very limited time to do the right thing and say something, and if you don't, oh no.
Yeah.
Right? Like
reflection.
Yeah.
I think the reflection part of it is great. And then I think the action part of it is even more so, meaning that it's the actions you take, especially as you're kind of progressing through that part, and then trying to make active change. So I think Esther's bringing up a good point where it's like, once you kind of recognize, you need to be open to trying to figure out what that is, and then making sure that your actions reflect solving it or fixing it. I think that I've had some experience with this, especially over the last year, where I had to go through a pretty big thing, and I ended up just saying, you know what, let me look and see what's actually going on. And then I made some adjustments and fixed it. And I think it's one of those things that I think by cutting some things out. So I think it's one of those things where I think it's a hard lesson to learn, but also just the internet at large is such a big kind of like visual tank. It's like a tank where it's like there's all eyes and there's all these different opinions and there's all these things that happen. Everything spirals really quickly. But
lots of pitchforks and torches very easily.
There's that, but there's also, I think that when you look at any marginalized group of people or anyone that feels like they're not being heard and they feel like they're being shut down, there is something to just being able to step back to say, why are you feeling this way? Or listening to why they feel that way, and then understanding and then making different choices. And I think we've seen that, especially over the last year with all the different movements and the things that have happened.
Very true.
It's more like, why are you looting? And it's just like, why are you more concerned about that than figuring out why they feel that way in the first place?
Right.
Like, it's gotten to a point where it's like they've said something over and over again, you don't listen, and now when they're doing this, you're concerned about that, which even proves more of the point that you don't care about what they're talking about. It's like those things. And then when you cycle that down the line of everything else, it's like, why are women feeling this way in the workplace? Let me understand that, like, what is happening? And then you hear it and then you're just like, oh my God. Like, so it's like, there's lots of different things that happen in these types of instances, but as an art community, we do need to support each other and then figure them out, like, and then actively make sure you're using your voice in the right direction to help support those things and say, I can understand this. And I think that what Esther said was true too, which is she says, I recognize my complacency in this, or I recognize that I was saying this thing. And then when you shift it, it's not even about making a big deal about it. It's just shifting it and making sure your actions as you move forward are helping to support that thing. I think that that's probably, as a human, that's all we can do, We
got one more question to kind of wrap this up. We've gone, we're almost hitting an hour and a half. This is great, guys. Thanks. We got one more question, and that would be, what advice do you guys have for people who might be struggling to get and connect with a community online? We've kind of touched about it a little bit, but it'll be nice to kind of, hone in on everybody's, like final words on that matter. Ashley?
I'd probably say start surfing around on places like Artstation for, people that you really like, styles that you relate to, styles that you say, like, I can feel that, like, I really like that, I want to learn from that. And just go into their, like, a lot of the times, a lot of these artists have in their about page, like, different socials and stuff listed there, like their Twitter or Instagram or anything. And just sort of like, if there is an online community that person hosts, if you're not comfortable with posting or even reaching out, because I know a lot of people aren't, which, I mean, if you can do that, because that would be the best thing. But if you aren't comfortable with that, there's also something to say for lurking, right? Like, and just kind of reading the comments, reading what the artists post. A lot of artists on Instagram too, like you guys were saying, you guys share artwork a lot. Phil, I think you said that. But a lot of these artists also do little tips and little like quick little snippets and things like that. So I think, you know, if you're more of a lurker, that's totally okay too. Like if you're scared to like reach out, I would encourage you though, when you are working with, you know, a project that you have, to try and do a little bit of that with, you know, your favorite artists if you can, and don't be hurt if nobody replies. Again, we're all really busy, but a lot of us want to help, right? And there's no hard feelings when that kind of stuff happens. So if you can't necessarily find like a Discord community, there's always lurking that can happen on Instagram and stuff like that, and there is that sort of sense of community as well, like if you just read and absorb.
Yeah. Jasmin?
For me, I think it's important that people stay consistent. Don't get discouraged maybe if you see that it doesn't work out straight away, that maybe people, you don't like have many followers or anything. That shouldn't blindside you, I think. Like focus on what you enjoy doing and hone your skill in that part and build your own niche. That's what helped me personally, because in the past years I've been doing art, people were saying to me, oh, don't do stylized art. Everything is realism. All AAA games are currently realistic. It's not going to help you later on with finding jobs. And that was very discouraging to hear, but I was just
Who told you that?
Like actually,
many people.
Oh my God.
That person, block, delete.
Yeah,
Block,
holy
delete.
cow, that was just a... Why would you ever say that?
That was
Oh my
horrible
gosh.
advice.
just link them the
I am
latest
sorry,
Epic demo.
Jasmin.
Yeah.
Someone said that to you. I am
Thank
sorry.
you. No, but for real, like it was hurtful to hear that, but I was just like, yeah, but I'm not into realism. I don't want to do this. I don't care if it's going to take me a couple of years to get into it. I'm just going to do it. And it's hard to find like that strength, but just try to find that thing that made you happy in the first place to get maybe into games or to draw or to do anything that you're passionate about. And I think that will help you along the way to just keep going and just do it for yourself and not for everyone else. That's, I think, another thing that with social media, people like end up doing art that should please others, that others enjoy. They start doing art that gets the most likes and retweets and everything. But if it doesn't make you happy, then don't do it. Like it's not gonna help you in the long run, or that you keep just doing things that other people expect from you. Just do what you really want to do, and eventually somebody will see your work and be like, oh yeah, I do like what this person is doing. I will work with them. I will support them. I will be friends with them, anything like that. Like you should be just open to that and just keep doing you and be confident in what you're doing. It's hard, but I think you learn that with over time, and that motivation you get from doing the things you enjoy is just the best feeling, I think, in the end. Like when it boils down to everything, I just feel the best doing things I love and not just doing it to please others in the end.
I really feel, and this is something that I've kind of struggled with, is, you know, like the whole follower count thing, you know, like I've kind of boiled it down to this, right? Like, so people will always follow you for the images that you make, but they'll stay around because of the person you are, right? And that's very, very important. So like if you can't separate those two and also realize that you're growing as an artist, and so what if your art gets only 15 likes? So what if it only gets 500 likes, and you know, you get a friend over there that's getting 10,000, you know, and it's just like, you'll get there. It's not a race. And also it's not what it's about. Art was never about that, you know. You just gotta breathe, and you gotta just take it in and do it for you. Yeah. Esther?
I mean, yeah. Like again, everyone's saying, you know, the same things. It also shows our, you know, like how from our experiences, how we all collectively, you know, agree on these things, you know, where you just like start posting, and then maybe you'll like start posting consistently. And if you want to be more consistent, right, you know, that's up to you. But if it's becoming more and more like not what is worth of your time, or you want to do it some way else, you know, like finding smaller groups, making your own group, like your friends group, right, and then broadening out from there. Definitely not having the physical meetup, you know, does hamper it a little bit, but at the same time, it means you can also, you know, connect with somebody like from Germany, right? You can, it's so opened up now that like now you can just find wherever corner of the Discord or interwebs you want. And I think like there's a bit of like the way that question is framed, in my opinion, kind of also speaks of FOMO. And as far as this industry is concerned, like everyone experiences that because there's like a million projects, million artists doing their million idea things or a million other things, and like it's really like you can't help but feel it because like Phil's probably working on something fantastic, Justin's working on something fantastic, Ashley and Jasmin, everyone here is working on something fantastic, and like there's not enough time in your life or like current block out to be able to work on that. So like when there's also different like opportunities and spaces, just take advantage that there is actually so many, right? And you might be more fit for like a group that's like 15 members, and it's the like the Facebook group from the class you took, right? And you just post there and you feed each other there. Or you're the type that really likes to just lurk or scroll or comment on every post on 10k hours, and if that's if that's what you want to do, then do that. So I think like with the addition of the internet, that's like another thing. It makes things a little more complicated, but also doesn't, in that sense, where it's just like now you have to learn how to navigate these like social media spaces. But it also means that like there's so many now. Like like I definitely like I thought when I was trying to break in I had to be in California. That like limits so much. Like in order to even be part of a community, period, like not even online, is like I literally had to physically be in like this little like 50-mile radius of Southern California, which was like now if I was like trying to break in now, I'd be like, shit, I can like I can like go to Europe.
Oh snap!
Jasmine's like talking about my Germany. I'm like, dude, I've always wanted to integrate it to Berlin. Like, fuck. Like, I'll just be like finding like a German like Discord, like just how do I move to Berlin?
There's full-blown mass exodus of LA right now, especially now that people the people in LA, once you know that you've made your contacts, Esther's completely right. Like it's such a new world. This last year showed that we can work anywhere. So people are just like, you know what, it's super expensive here. I'm gonna move to Texas and take this LA money, and now I can live with a mansion with servants because it's awesome. Like it's like that type of deal. So breaking in now, that she's completely right. You have the opportunity you can live in South Africa and work for Netflix in LA. Like you can be anywhere as long as your talent is showing, and you have the access to show it to people. And the studios right now we're in a place, it's a good place to be, especially as an artist. We're in this place where the studios and everyone are diversifying. They're looking for new stories. I know that there are stories now that are going to be coming out about like, Filipino, like there's all these different stories, like, Southeast Asia. They're focused on these specific bits of culture. And we're actively experiencing it in real time, meaning that I can actually see it happening. It's not something where like, I hope one day they figure this out. It's happening. And I think it's kind of cool, but it's also happening to where, you can have people in Germany, you can have people all over the place, and they're all working. Whereas before, Esther's right, it literally was so specific, like you must live in LA, you must show up, and people would be like, man, we really like your art. And you're like, where do you live? And you're just like, oh, I live in, wherever, New York. And they'd be like, oh, and then they just disappear. And you're like, what? I can work with you. There is Zoom, like Zoom's been around a really long time. I think it's funny too, because now we have our bosses, costume designers and stuff, we've been trying to convince them of Zoom forever because we would have to drive in and out of the office. And I'm just like, I sit in this office for 10 hours a day in the dark, pretty much by myself working. And I come and talk to you every once in a while, but easily I could be doing that at home. So now it's kind of proven that. Move, let your freak flag fly, move to Germany, go.
You just say let your freak flag fly. I love it. So I think that's actually about it, guys. Did everybody get a chance to answer the final question? I think so. Yeah. All right. Well, you know what? I think we're gonna go ahead and end it here. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Artstation thanks you. Brick thanks you. I thank you. And I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. And thanks for being here.
Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
I appreciate being here.
Thank
no problem.
you.
Same here. This was amazing.